It's funny. I talk a lot about wide receivers and how important they are to the team and how much a position of need that is. And at the same time, I'm sitting here wondering if the one player they have who fits the mold might not be expendable. Good afternoon to you. Good Tuesday afternoon. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is the new Double Shot Show that comes your way every weekday afternoon. I am not a George Pickens basher. I feel like I have to preface every George discussion that I have with that. I, especially as a rookie, got to like the kid. Felt like I got to know him a little bit. Not so much over the past couple seasons. But there's no enmity. There's no, can't stand him or, don't like him for whatever reason. Have never had a bad experience with him. That said, he's 23 years old. And not only has he not come close to growing up, there are times when it looks like an outright regression. And for this team to continue down that same path, almost as if pretending that there's nothing that can be done about it, or worse, just constantly accommodating him. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. I don't know that that's something that's beneficial to the Steelers in the short or long term. I really don't. I saw early this past season, whenever everybody was mad at him, everybody over the blocks that he didn't want to participate in, over other behavioral issues, that it had a negative impact. It had a negative impact on the room. It had a negative impact on the offense. And I'm reminded, as you probably are in hearing this, that there once upon a time was a guy in Antonio Brown that they put up with, and they put up with to, incredibly impactful results. But here are George's results. This is from just this past season. 14 games, of course, had to miss a couple to injury. 59 catches on 103 targets. Actually, not a bad ratio for a guy who's getting moon balls a lot. 900 yards. And that can't be right. 3 touchdowns? He had 3 touchdowns. See, you learn something new every day on this show, just like I learned it now. He had 3 touchdowns. The yardage total alone was 32nd in a 32-team league. So if you were stacking number one receivers, of course, that's not how this works. There's several teams that have multiples up there, but that would make him, the least of the number one wide receiver types. I don't know that that's worth it. My feeling as it relates to the wide receivers room, and just set George aside for a moment, if you can, is that you have something in Calvin Austin. Cal has grown week after week. It's something he and I talk about regularly, where there will be something that he'll do in the game that he didn't do in the previous game or hadn't done that season, a certain type of route, a certain, let's say, catch and finish to his play. And he knows it. He's aware of it. The Steelers know it. They're aware of it, and they appreciate it, and they should. He's getting better. Works his rear end off. Ultimate character guy. Ultimate team guy. Great. Where does he slot in to a viable NFL wide receivers room? That's to be determined, but he does. He does. He's one of your starting 3. You have that. My feeling is that you need the starting 2. You need 2 more. And I don't know that I'd want George being part of that. I don't know that I'd want George being the one who disrupts that. George, for anybody who doesn't know, is entering his last year of his rookie deal. And, of course, he'd be a free agent after that. I'm not sure that I'd want to keep him going into the season. Now, when this came up with Art Rooney at our meeting with him a few days ago, he just very blanketly stated that they're looking forward to working with George another year and whatever else. So it sounds to me like they've made up their mind. That doesn't mean that that's, set in stone, but it means that there's a pretty good chance of it, a better chance than not. And I'm not crazy about this. I just want to see real live wide receivers on this roster. I don't care if they're kids. I don't care if they're ice cold rookies. I want to see talented, at least semi not diva type wide receivers. And I want to see how they fit with Cal. I want to see how Roman Wilson ultimately makes it into this. I'd like to see, if it's not Mike Williams, if somebody else gets retained as a veteran presence who shows what, how to carry yourself, how to do certain things, maybe helps out on special teams. That'd be okay too. But you're missing 2 wide receivers. You don't need to be babysitting any of them. Not when they're number 32 in the league. Okay, I'm babysitting AB all day long. I'm babysitting Jamar Chase and T. Higgins all day long. I'm babysitting Justin Jefferson. I'm not babysitting George. I'm not babysitting him for the level that he gets you. The occasional odd, whoa, how did he do that? Isn't the same as what these other teams have got. There's not a growth pattern the way we saw, for example, with Jerry Jeudy. Who a little bit of a slow start as a rookie in Denver, goes to Cleveland, has himself a really nice season despite not having a quarterback, not really having an offense. That's not there for George. George has been in the league for 3 years. I don't know that he's gotten worse, but I don't know that he's gotten better. And I just don't, I don't need to have Zach Azzani hired as your wide receivers coach just because he has the reputation of being this tough disciplinarian. I don't need to see teammates and other coaches and assistants assigned on the Steelers sidelines to make sure that he doesn't lose it with this guy or that guy or even the crowd. You've seen this. I'm not breaking news here. You've seen it with your own eyes. Just throwing it out there. I'm not burying him. I'm not ruling out that he could ever grow up or whatever. I just haven't seen it. When we come back, Chris Halleck.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Joined now by Chris Halleck. Chris, is George worth it? Is he a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL? Because I think that's where the discussion kind of has to start.
I do think he is right there in terms of being a top 10 guy in the league. I think you can make an argument for it.
All right, let's hear that argument.
So obviously you have the splash, the catch, the contested catches, the body control. He can make some catches that almost nobody else in the league can make. That does qualify as something. And also he has grown as a route runner over the course of his career. Now he doesn't gain the separation you'd like to see, like the same type of separation that Jamar Chase gets or Justin Jefferson gets or any of these top guys get. But he has still grown that much as a route runner where he can then take his ability to use his big body and to make big catches and to make contested catches in outside of just the go balls. So in terms of actual ability, yes, I think you could make an argument for it. I'm not going to go ahead and say he definitely is.
Yeah,
but I think you could make an argument.
This is what I think. With immense respect, you just spent a week in Mobile, Alabama. You've been looking at, you know what I'm going to say here. You're looking at college prospects and you're rating them by their ceiling, by where they can top out. That's just the way the mentality goes down there. I get that part. That's not this. That's not somebody who's already been in the league for 3 years. I think you make a really good point that I didn't in the opening segment, that he's improved as a route runner. He's improved his versatility as a wide receiver. He's now able to do more things in the short field, make short short range catches and try even sometimes make something a little bit extra out of them. That's to his credit. But when you're talking about guys that are up there, you're talking first and foremost about consistency, and you're talking about production, because the name of the game is still yards. That's the first stat we look to for receivers is yards. The second one we look to is touchdowns. And if you're going to be that bomb guy, if you're going to be that one who's getting those deep balls, and you're only finding the end zone 3 times all season, I'm not putting that in a class with any number of guys here. I'm looking at the number of wide receivers this past season who had double-digit touchdowns. There were 9 of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Jamar had 17.
Mm-hmm.
Terry McLaurin, neglected to mention him, definitely shouldn't have done that, had 13. Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit, really underappreciated guy, I think, in the league, had 12 of them. It's got to be one or the other. And to me, if you're the Steelers and you're coming up with some sort of bigger plan for George, you have to start with whether or not he's worth it. And that's actually the part that I'm still stuck on.
Yeah, part of it I do think is, when in terms of like touchdowns and production like that, I think you do have to take into account the type of offense that the Steelers play. I mean, they are a run-first team. They're right up there with teams that run the ball more often than anybody else. And so that just limits opportunities as opposed to Cincinnati, for example, who just likes to throw. I mean, their run game was pretty much non-existent, especially whenever I can't remember the guy's name. I think Zach Moss went down with an injury. So it pretty much at that point was Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and
sure it was
Mike Gesicki. And let me just throw the ball 50 times a game. And it's easy to score a lot of touchdowns when you're throwing the ball. That I won't say easy, but easier to score more when you're throwing more. That being said, I do think you make a good point in terms of consistency, because when you do look at those guys, when you look at the best of the best, when you look at Jamar and Justin Jefferson and Terry McLaurin and Amon-Ra St. Brown and all those guys, they all are in a higher class than George, because they are more consistent. They are more consistent in terms of what they can do in their entire overall game, and they seldom disappear for any length of time. And in a game in which they needed George to be George in that season finale against the Bengals, how many drops did he have?
Oh,
I mean, they needed him.
I mean, everybody has a bad game. In fairness, right. George has not been a drop-prone guy. He just had a day.
Right, but you're also talking about that's a big game in which they could have won. That was a winnable football game, and they needed their most dangerous player on offense to make some plays, and he didn't make any.
No, none.
And he let other plays just go, and by dropping passes, and then he's getting
or not
into
trying or losing focus or whatever.
Yeah, and getting into it with fans and stuff. It's like, and that's where you have to begin wondering about the character stuff too, because that stuff plays a role into whether you're going to give a guy a big contract like that, give a guy like that a big contract. And so, yeah, those guys are in a higher class for a reason.
Just to be clear here, I'm not giving him any bigger contract. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm not in the solar system of giving him some big contract. This is just whether or not you bring him back for 2025. I should have said that off the top here. This isn't about keeping George long term. The diva-ness factor, it's not even a word, that tends to not get better over time. Okay? Whatever it was that compelled George to go out there on Christmas and do whatever that was, the fist bumps with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce when they were on the TV set there at Acrisure Stadium. He thinks he's at that level. I don't even know if they're even aware of who he is.
No,
I'm being serious. Yeah. It's like I don't know what level of delusion's taking place there. And that's only going to get magnified. So there's no nothing about a long-term contract here. I just want to see wide receivers, Chris. I can't make this any more plain. Okay. I really feel like this is the number one need for this football team.
Well, and when you talk about having George for 2025 or not, I
Mhm.
do think this is a situation. Now, obviously, it depends on what they do in free agency. If they do go out and just throw the bag at T. Higgins and bring him here, then okay, obviously that makes George way more expendable.
They're not doing that.
No, they're not. I'm just saying in a hypothetical sense. But regardless of what they do in free agency, or if they trade for Cooper Kupp or anything like that,
Now we're talking.
does draft night come, or day one, or whether day two of the draft, and what if they get phone calls? What if it's like George Pickens and you can pick up a second round pick straight up? You get the same round pick that you actually used on George. Do you consider that? I don't know. Like, it depends on what you could possibly do to make the football team better. Now, I'm not saying that that's what they should do. It does depend on what else they do, because right now they need another guy beside George. Like, they need another guy because they didn't have that last year. And so if you get rid of George, that now means you have to add two guys to that room.
Right.
And so it's something to consider. Yeah.
Or one really impactful guy and start getting what you're supposed to get out of Roman Wilson, or at least try to get it.
I also wouldn't. I'm not talking about this as a number one or number two, but Calvin Austin, to me, I was looking it up. Average separation score for all receivers against man coverage, Calvin Austin ranked 10th in the NFL.
He is getting better. He's getting better every season. Every game, Chris. And I really feel like there's a spot for Cal. Yeah. I don't know. It feels like everybody has to keep making comparisons to Puka Nacua when it comes to these guys now, but that's all right.
Yeah.
The part of that is that they're really good at scheming him open too.
Yeah.
But when you look at who the Steelers have currently, you could make an argument that you've got a couple of guys. You just need somebody that you can count on to be a one who gets you these types of yardage. The top 10 yard, he got to get to 1,000. You got to get, you don't have to be Chase and get to 1708. Okay. Yeah. All right. You don't have to do any of that, but I think you have to be someone who's in 1,000 to even 1,200 kind of range. If it isn't as a rookie, then it's got at least the potential to do that. That's not here, and that's not George.
No, it's not. But I think the reason why you kind of hope for it is he's well more than capable of getting it. And I think that's the most frustrating part, is that when you look at George and you look at what he's put together for a pretty sustained period of time, he's more than capable of being that type of a receiver. If he were to have his head on straight, he could be up there with all those guys that we've been talking about.
That's a heck of an if, Chris.
I know it is. And that's why you're talking about not wanting to give him the contract. And that's why there's the talk that he's even expendable before, as a trade-off or a trade candidate before the season even begins.
Yards after the catch. Last one before I let you go. My goodness, he's not even on this list. I'm looking through the first 50 on this list, and I don't see him.
Yeah.
There's no way that's right. Let me do a quick search here. That would be totally nuts.
Yeah.
No, but he's not on the list, Chris.
When you run a whole bunch of go balls, and I mean, that's your catch pretty much.
Then something.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm up to 100 and he's not there.
Yeah.
There he is, 107.
Yeah. 215
total yards after the catch. I'm sorry. That's not worth all this. It's just not. It's not. The splash and everything else, that's fun. It makes for phenomenal highlights. Yep. But that's not what's needed, When we come back, J1Q.
Safety is a habit. Gun safety and responsible storage are no different. Help prevent gun accidents, misuse, and theft. Keep firearms safe and secure when not in use. For safe storage options, visit projectchildsafe.org.
Time now for today's J1Q. That stands for just one question. And for that, we go down to, Mobile, Alabama.
Yo, what's up, DK? It is Matt McCoy down here at Hancock Whitney Stadium. You got the Senior Bowl going on right behind me, right there. And I have been dying. And I know we've talked about the quarterbacks a lot this season, but this one's like been burning a hole in my soul and my heart. So here's my question for you. Ooh, something big must have just happened. Do you think the inconsistency in the quarterback play was due to the shortcomings of Justin Fields and Russell Wilson themselves? Or do you think it was more the scheming of Arthur Smith not playing to the strengths of whatever quarterback he had under center at the time? Just saying, it's one of those things that's bugged me all season long as we try to figure out a quarterback moving forward. Looking forward to hearing your answer. And hey, here we go from all the way in Mobile, Alabama. Bama Berg boy out.
Appreciate you, Matt. That's really fun stuff. Anybody who ever wants to send something this way that's from the scene like that, you will move to the top of the list in a heartbeat. That's great. I'm going to take your question and I'm going to split it into two parts because I think that's the only fair way to approach this. Since these are two very different quarterbacks, two very different people even, and they also had two very different circumstances. In Justin Fields' case, I don't feel he ever went bad. I don't feel he ever deserved to be benched. Said so at the time. Go look it up. I feel like what happened with Justin was that he was so phenomenally accurate through training camp, through the preseason, and then through, really, if you think about it, the first 4, maybe 4.5 games of the 6 that he started. And then there was a little bit of a drop-off when it came to accuracy. Remember that? Like, you saw some passes where you just went, huh? And otherwise, I don't know that there was that much of a difference. I feel like that was something that he could have gotten back. He could have just gotten on his horse if he'd have been allowed to play through it. Of course, Mike Tomlin had a different viewpoint. And since he's the highly compensated head coach, as he pointed out to all of us at the time, he had every authority and every right to make the change that he did. And it obviously went well for a few weeks there for Russell Wilson. Where Russ went bad, I feel, was a very different scenario. Russ was just determined to show everybody that he was Russ from 10 years ago in Seattle, and that escaping all the pressure that was going to come in through that line was just going to be part of his repertoire, same as it was part of Justin's repertoire. Well, he can't anymore. And I think everybody got to see that. And what was worse, he just wouldn't let go of it. Meaning he wouldn't let go of the 10 years ago Russ, and he wouldn't let go of the football. So are there other factors in this? Sure, of course. I mentioned, the wide receiver play already. I mentioned, Arthur Smith in the recent past as not having done enough to work specifically with Russ and his meaning effectively and getting the most out of him. So yeah, there are always, it's never about one thing, but if you're looking for the most prominent thing, to me, it's just that Justin started to not be like at some crazy 75-80% precision rate. And Tomlin said at the first possible opportunity, oh, look, I've got the 2 New Jersey teams coming up on the schedule. I'm just going to put Russ in there. I'm going to do that now. There's a reason everybody in the building, or most everybody in the building, was against that. So I appreciate the question there, Matt. I appreciate the camera work there too. That was pretty impressive. So we're going to do another one of these tomorrow. Thanks for watching, everybody.